Welcome to the Crisscross Corner podcast.
Welcome back to the Crisscross Corner. I'm your host, Kris. And before we begin, shout out to all the members in the Crisscross Corner podcast Facebook group. Share and join the conversation every week on Facebook. If you don't want to miss another podcast episode, click the subscribe button and the notification bell to be notified of our next videos on YouTube. Just go to Crisscross Corner on YouTube. Listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and the Anchor app. Support the podcast monthly with $4.99 a month to sustain future episodes. Your support gives you the power to give suggestions for topics on the podcast, including the top 10 list of the week. Just go to anchor.fm/crisscrosscorner/support. Thank you for your donation. Now let's get into what you're doing, Detroit. What you doing? First, before we begin, shout out to my cousin Brandon Allen Canty for graduating Royal Oak High School, class of 2021. He's going to Michigan State in the fall, and I wish him the best. All right, what you doing, Detroit? So many things around Detroit. If anybody was downtown or around the Belle Isle area for the past 3 weeks, you guys would know that Belle Isle was closed down for the second time in a week due to overcrowding. Now, this is a mixture of a million factors. You have the Grand Prix setup, which pushes everybody to the back of the park. You have hot weather, which means everybody's going to Belle Isle. And then you have the weekend, which means everybody's off. Everybody's off. Everybody's hot. Everybody wants to see everybody. And there's not a lot of space, which means it's going to be overcrowded, which has happened the last few weekends. Now, this is the second time in a week that it's closed down, which means it's a hot spot in Detroit. It's that, and now we have this new roller rink downtown. We have Greektown downtown. We have tons of rooftop bars downtown. And we have the Riverwalk. So that's a lot of summer stuff to do. And somehow Belle Isle is still overcrowded. Guess you got to get there before 12 o'clock. Or else you won't be able to get on. What made Faygo, a famous Detroit soda, soft drink, pop, soda pop, whatever y'all want to call it. In Detroit, we call it pop. Don't get it twisted. Detroit's Faygo launches a new explosive, quote unquote, firework flavor. So the new flavor of pop is going to be the same flavor as Bomb Pops. So if you like Bomb Pops, you now have a soda that tastes like Bomb Pops. Congratulations. The FBI and Detroit Police Department find 4 bodies in one grave. Yes, I said it. 4 bodies in one grave after receiving complaints of improper burial. I always wanted to know this, but I know a cemetery and funeral home is one of the, I don't mean to sound cold or anything, but that's one of the best businesses out there. It's always going to be in business because people are going to die. But I always wondered what they did once they ran out of room in a cemetery. I always wanted to know that. I'm going to ask one of my friends who works in a funeral home to come on the show, and we're going to talk about basic funeral home and cemetery questions. But 4 people in one grave is not proper at all, unless it's requested by a family, which I don't know why it would be requested by family, but it's only supposed to happen in certain circumstances where one or two bodies are buried within the same grave, like a mom and a baby, mom and a child, father and child, all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? But not four bodies. We don't know if they're different family members or different people or just people they were like, okay, they're not here. We're just going to put them with this body and put that body with that body and put that body with those two bodies and then put that body with those three bodies. And then I don't know. I just don't know. We're just it's getting bad here in Detroit. Um, Detroit busts a man for selling fireworks at his home. See, I wonder how people are getting all these fireworks so quickly because everybody and their mama, everybody and their auntie, everybody and their grandma had fireworks last summer. And now we found out where they were getting them from. This man with over 400 pounds of fireworks. Yes, I said it, 400 pounds. He had everything. They had it all lined up. They're about to set it off this summer. Not anymore, because I haven't heard nothing all summer. And it's only June. I ain't heard nothing. Last year, like around May, we were hearing tons of fireworks. But not anymore. They must have stopped something. Next story, we have 40 people connected with the Vice Lord Nation gang have been charged in a federal racketeering case. Now, racketeering is for the people who don't know what racketeering is, it is the dishonest and fraudulent business dealing. So basically, you're having a business that doesn't exist or a business covering up an illegal business and all that stuff. That's racketeering. And of course, we had the famous Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, the RICO case, where it's a federal law designed to combat organized crime in the United States. It allows prosecution and civil penalties for racketeering activity performed as part of an ongoing criminal enterprise. So if you are part of an enterprise, aka the Vice Lord Nation gang, if one of the gang members do something bad involving that has anything to do with that business, everybody in that business is now a criminal. In the courtroom, it's called aiding and abetting. Aiding and abetting fraudulent business, which means you all get charged the same for the same crime, even if you didn't do anything. But you were affiliated with them. So this is a ain't that bad a bitch moment and a crisscross corner life lesson. Know who your friends are. Ask questions because you don't want to be dragged down a bad road to prison or worse, death. Okay, so please make that second choice to get in that car with your friends, going to a party. Make that second choice by not drinking at the party or drinking from the jungle juice. Okay, just think about things because one crucial decision will change your life forever. All right. Now, moving on to the world, Walmart and Target say that they're not having their employees come in on Thanksgiving, which is great because they shouldn't be working on Thanksgiving in the first place. Everybody should be home with their families on Thanksgiving, not working, fighting people at Walmart on Black Friday, on Thursday. Before I get more mad, which I'm going to get more mad because whether we like it or not, major clothing line and company, Balenciaga, just teamed up with Crocs to make a stiletto clog. I'm looking at this ugly picture. It's a Croc, ladies and gentlemen, with a studded There's a little small heel in it. This is not a joke, people. This is an actual thing. This is a croc heel, ladies and gentlemen. I'm trying not to get mad. I'm gonna move on to the next thing. A nutritionist shares the best things to order at Starbucks. Now we're going to talk about these things. We're going to talk about, of course, the breakfast. The breakfast foods are more healthier than most fast food restaurant breakfasts, including McDonald's, Wendy's, and Chick-fil-A. Shout out to Wendy's breakfast. They got my dollar. So did Chick-fil-A, but their lines be long, so they only get my money once a month. But the turkey bacon cheddar and egg sandwich is pretty good. Has a lot of sodium in it, sodium and processed meat, but it's way healthier than McDonald's. You have classic oatmeal, of course. It's oatmeal, fiber, blah, blah, blah. Spinach and feta egg white wrap is also a big good one to have at Starbucks. For lunch, you have the what's it called? The quinoa and chicken protein bowl with black beans. People like that. They usually either go to Starbucks for that or they go to Chipotle, Qdoba, and any other place that sells the black bean protein bowl, or the Power Bowl at Taco Bell. That's also a good thing to have. But that's all comparison to Starbucks. Now, for I think that's for lunch as well. I believe the grilled chicken and hummus protein box, that's also great. Chickpea bites and avocado protein box, amazing. Snacks, we got the yogurt cup, the Squirrel brand classic almonds. And of course, we have, I'm going to put it in there, the cake pops, even though they're not healthy. But they're a good, they're a little good on the go snack. Now, speaking of that, these are things to skip at Starbucks. Of course, everything with sugar in it. Uh, the drinks, of course, the coffee with extra sugar in it. Don't get it with sugar. Get it. I like to get my Starbucks coffee because Starbucks coffee is so strong. Like you have to put a lot of sugar in it to make it taste good. Usually, black coffee at like Tim Hortons or Big B or any other coffee shop would have black coffee and it tastes good a little bit, but then you add the sugar and cream, a little sugar and a little cream, and it'll just be right. But Starbucks, you just gotta unload half the bottle of sugar to just make it taste good. It's like, oh, I hate Starbucks coffee. Now there are iced drinks and their frappuccinos. Now that is what keeps me coming to Starbucks. Okay, their baked goods are also not a good thing to eat, even though I do like the coffee cakes, the chocolate chip cookies, and okay, moving on. I don't want to dwell on Starbucks. Um, Speaking of another thing that's good, the three remaining survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre are to receive $300,000. I like to see America right its wrongs, and this is a step in the right direction. However, I'm still waiting. I repeat, I am still waiting on my 40 acres and a mule. I will sell that mule. I will sell it as soon as you give it to me. But it's just the principle of giving it to me. And that's all we have for What You Do in Detroit. If you have any stories around Detroit or around the world, please send them in to Crisscross Corner on Instagram or join the Crisscross Corner podcast Facebook group and put it in the chat. All right. Topic of the day. We're going to talk about some moments that shook Detroit. Now, these are a combination of moments that actually shook Detroit, like momentum changers, and some events that you might not have known happened in Detroit. So we're going to move on and move to back to 1999. 1998, actually. 1998, a good time in Detroit history. It was actually the date when Detroit finally realized that its population went down significantly since I think it was 1960s, the 1960s, where it reached its peak of almost 2 million. Because as you can see, Detroit, if you look at a map, Detroit is just huge. Now it only has like 800,000 people. But well, speaking of that, July 18th, 2013 is the day that Detroit filed for the largest municipal, I cannot speak today, the largest municipal bankruptcy in US history. The city's debt hovered around $18 billion with a B, 18 billion. Detroit and its citizens were plunged into an intense debate on how to help the city recover. It's been a long, thorny path for Detroiters, and everyone has had to make concessions. And then we move on. Almost over a year later, in December of 2014, is when Detroit emerged from that bankruptcy. And now it's rebuilding. We're still in a rebuilding phase in Detroit. Everything's looking better. Good. Downtown is looking better. Midtown's looking better. The surrounding areas around downtown are looking and feeling actually rejuvenated and given a breath of fresh air. However, there are a lot of places around Detroit and the suburbs of Detroit that have been neglected and forgotten about. And it's sad. And speaking of sad, another moment that rocked Detroit, July 23rd, 1967. All the old people, I don't mean to offend you guys, but all the old people know what this is. It was the riot of 1967. It was called the Blind Pig. That was a club that people were drinking at, and it was an after-hours bar. Police decided to raid the spot, and then the African Americans had enough. They was like, "All right, we tired," and then it lasted, I think, 3 to 4 days along Rosa Parks, 12th Street, Rosa Parks, and then they had to bring in the National Guard to stop it all. That happened in Detroit, 1967. Let's move on to a brighter and happier note. Musical note. We have, no pun intended, January 12th, 1959 is where Berry Gordy founded Tamla Records, which marked his first record producer. His first record producing. He signed a handful of artists, including, of course, Smokey Robinson, Jackie Wilson, Barrett Strong, which is actually the first hit Motown had. His song "Money That's What I Want" is Motown's first chart topper. 1956, April 8th was the last scheduled streetcar operating in Detroit on Woodward Avenue. It would take a long time before streetcars came back to Detroit. So the Woodward line started in 1863, so during the Civil War, and it closed down in 1956. And the Q line opened in 2017. So there were no rail lines in Detroit from 1956 to 2017. Because of, we all know what happened. The car industry said that buses were better and they took out all the rails and stuff. But we'll get into that another time. We're going to talk about these things that rocked Detroit's history. We have 1805, June 30th, is when the Detroit became the capital of Michigan Territory. Yes, Detroit was once Michigan's capital. A lot of people forget about that. until they moved it to Lansing. Um, I don't know when that date was, but it happened. They were here. Detroit was the capital of the Michigan Territory before Michigan was a state. And of course, we have, July 24th, 1701. Every Detroiter should know this. Antoine Lume de la Mont Cadillac came and set foot at the port of Detroit, which is still here today, on July 24th, 1701. None of the stuff is here today because it was that old. And Detroit had a huge fire back in the day, which destroyed the city. So they rebuilt it from scratch, and we have the city that you have today. And let me see what else we have. Let's go through some other moments we have in Detroit. Oh, that's cool. The Detroit Public Library was established in 1865, along with the Detroit Police Department. City Hall was built in 1871. Belle Isle becomes part of the city in 1879. 1885 was where the DIA was established. We have Palmer Park, which is off of Woodward, was established in 1893. We have the Detroit Tigers were formed in 1901. We have 4 titles, and our last title was in 1984. The Belle Isle Aquarium opened in 1904. The Detroit Auto Show started in 1907. The Ford Building downtown was created in 1909. Chevrolet opens its first factory in Detroit in 1911, giving birth to Detroit as a center for automobile dominance in the 20th century. And it became Detroit's sole industry. Cars, tires, steel, all in Detroit. What else we got? We have the Buell Building, which I have worked in. Smart offices are in there. We had SMART stands for Suburban Mobility Authority for regional transportation. So all the suburban bus routes, their main office is in the Buell Building. And that building was built in 1925. City airports off Gratiot and Conant. Is it Conant or Connor? Gratiot and Connor. City airport opens in 1927. 1928, the next year, the Detroit Zoo opens. And also in 1928, the Fisher Building, which is off of Grand Boulevard, and the Penobscot Building, which is downtown, were also built. 1929 is when the Ambassador Bridge was built, and the Union Trust Building skyscraper was built in 1929. 1930 was when the Detroit Windsor Tunnel was built. And also in 1930, the population of Detroit reached 1.56 million. Next, we have the Detroit Tigers win their first, actually it wasn't their first, but yeah, it was their first World Series title, 1935. The first urban freeway ever built, the Davidson Freeway, was built in 1941. Also in 1943, we had it was a riot, of course, spurred by competition among Black and white residents for wartime factory jobs. It resulted in 34 deaths. 1944, landmark bill from the executive office was passed. The GI Bill was passed in 1944, allowing people to buy stuff when they came back from war. One of the biggest things for the GI Bill was buying houses, and that sparked a phenomenon known as suburbanization. We'll get on to that in another episode. 10 years later, from their 1935 World Series, the 1945 World Series is when the Detroit Tigers win again, their second title. 1950. So 1950 is when Detroit reached its height. It was at 1.85 million. So put that in your. I know how many people were in Detroit at its peak. 1.85 million. 1958, the Spirit of Detroit, the green guy with the stuff holding on Woodward and Larned. 1958, that was when it was dedicated to the city. 1958. Motown Records is established in 1959/1960. We just went over that. Cobo Hall, which we can't call it Cobo Hall anymore, it is now called the TCF Center. It opened in 1960. Our sister city agreement was established with a city in Japan known as Toyota. We had the Great March to Freedom in 1963 with Martin Luther King, where he did his first I Have a Dream speech. He did his second one at Washington, D.C. Many people don't know that. He did his first I Have a Dream speech here in Detroit in 1963. Speaking of Black history, the Wright Museum of African American History was established in 1965. And then John Conyers becomes the first U.S. representative for Michigan's first congressional district. So John Conyers, African American. He was a landmark. He was a benchmark. He was a checkpoint in Black people becoming part of state government, national government, and we thank him. Of course, we talked about the 1967 12th Street riot. It was one of the worst riots in American history, and Detroit has never been the same since. Wayne County Community College was established in 1967. The Fisher Freeway opens in 1967, which is also I-75. 1970, we have the Detroit Science Center. 1977, the Renaissance Center was built. Okay, I'm gonna talk about this. Hey, y'all need to listen to this with an open mind. Not looking back in hindsight of what could have been, but just take this with a with a grain of salt. Saddam Hussein in 1979 makes a large donation to a Detroit church and receives the key to the city. So Saddam Hussein's relationship with Detroit began in 1979 when Reverend Jacob Yasso of the Chaldean Sacred Heart congratulated Hussein on his presidency. This is 1979, folks. Goodness gracious. He also said that in return, his church had received almost $500,000 from the former Iraqi dictator. This is 1979, folks. This is before all the bad stuff happened. Okay. 1980. 1980s were like a flash pan, and like the Tigers won the World Series against the Padres, which I forgot the Padres were a team. Um, Pope John Paul II visits Detroit in 1987. The Belle Air Cinema off of 8 Mile opens in 1988. I don't know why they put that on here. Um, One Detroit Center skyscraper was built in 1993. That's the iconic one with the gray triangles going up the sides of it. Um, Nancy Kerrigan was attacked at Cobo Arena before the 1994 U.S. Figure Skating Championships. Um, the Detroit Red Wings wins their first Stanley Cup in 42 years in 1997. 1999, like I said earlier, is an iconic part in Detroit history because the Detroit Tigers played their final game at the classic Tiger Stadium, which opened in 1912. It was home to the Tigers and the Lions at a certain point. But then the Lions moved to Pontiac at the Silverdome, and the Tigers would move down the street to Comerica Park in 2000, which also the Lions would move back to Detroit from Pontiac in 2002. Uh, I forgot about this. The Northeast blackout of 2003. I remember I was at the Detroit Science Center at science camp, and the lights just went out. I was like, well, "Am I gonna turn the lights back on?" And then it turned out like the whole eastern part of the country was just knocked out of power, and that was ridiculous. And these things are crazy, guys. 2003 was when Detroit Sister City Agreement was established with what city? With Dubai. That's crazy. Well, first we have Toyota Japan, which is ironic because we make cars. Both of us make cars. But then we have Dubai. That's crazy. 2004, Campus Martius opens in downtown Detroit. We also have in 2004 the Detroit Pistons win the NBA Finals against the Lakers, which we just killed them. Um, 2005 is when Comerica hosted the All Star Game. 2006 is when we hosted the Super Bowl. What else? Yeah, we have to talk about this because 2008 is when Kwame Kilpatrick resigned as mayor after pleading guilty to 2 counts of obstruction of justice and no contest to 1 count of assaulting and obstructing a police officer. Obstructing a police officer. Mm-mm-mm. Speaking of him, he's supposed to be preaching this weekend, so he's about to steal all the collection plate money, but it's okay. Um, the Detroit Piston Dave Bing became mayor, and he was reelected to full-term office. And then after that, Mayor, I forgot his name. I forgot this white man's name. Mike Duggan becomes mayor in 2014. And then, I mean, I guess there's not a lot of big things. 2018 is when Bedrock Detroit, owned by Dan Gilbert, announces a 900 million two-building project on the former Hudson site, and it's supposed to be the tallest retail, which used to be the tallest retail tower in the world. Um, it will include a 58-story tower, and it's currently being built right now. So that has been important things that happened in Detroit, important things that shook Detroit. If you want to give me more topics for the show, please DM us on Instagram at Crisscross Corner. We will get to you expeditiously. I can't speak today, folks. Um, we'll see if it's appropriate for the time, and we will talk about it. This topic was chosen by our co-host, Mark Simpson. However, he's at work right now, so I had to talk about it by myself. Another thing, we have 1987. We have The People Mover, was started in 1987. And I still don't know why it's still in operation today. Let's talk about this top 10 list. 10 movies that traumatized me as a kid. Number 10. No Country for Old Men. I don't know what it was about Anton Segura, but he just scared the fuck out of me. Every time I go to a hotel room, I make sure the bed ain't next to the door. Number 9, we have Saw. Just crazy. It's just a crazy movie. Number 8, we have The Covenant. Covenant was scary. That one spider scene still creeps me out to this day. Number 7. It's gonna be crazy, all y'all, but I used to be scared of Cats Don't Dance. This is between me and you guys. Cats Don't Dance is on this list. Number 6, we have number 6. Number 6, we have, goodness gracious, I hate this movie so much. Final Destination. Any of them. I don't care which one it is. They just traumatized me forever. Number 5, we have one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, The Ring. That was a scary movie. Number 4, we have, this didn't traumatize me as it more or less, maybe not want to watch it again. Because it was just stupid scary. Beetlejuice. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I was scared of Beetlejuice. You can laugh at me all you want. It's not going to change who I am. Next we have, this is a scary movie. I don't want to say this out loud in front of the people, but I'm going to do it anyway. It was not really a scary movie. It just traumatized me. We're going to talk about. I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to skip it. It's just A Bug's Life, everybody. A Bug's Life. Yes, I said it. A Bug's Life traumatized me. It was scary back in the day. I don't know why I was scared, but I was scared. Number 2. Is gonna be. I don't know what number 2 is gonna be. I know what number 1 is gonna be. But number 2, when I was a kid, I used to be afraid of. I wasn't afraid of Paranormal Activity. It was scary. I used to be scared of Scream too, but I don't know. That wasn't really scary. The Conjuring was scary. And number 1 is The Wiz. Everybody knows that is one of my most scariest movies of all time, because there's the one part where they're in the subway And there's one guy with the two orange things got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I was like, why are they getting bigger and bigger and bigger? And they just got more uglier and more scarier. And then they got trapped at the top of the stair and they kept on getting closer and closer and closer. And then Evelyn by Mabel King, she was ugly and she was scary. And the five monkeys were scary. And they just came out of nowhere. How'd they move the trash cans? They had no hands. That was scary, guys. Anyway, that's been another edition of Crisscross Corner. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Please subscribe to Anchor at anchor.fm/crisscrosscorner/support. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Stay safe, social distance, and be nice to each other.